The real life hack is to understand yourself, your place in the universe, and align with it. Because when you are true to yourself, when you are true to your reality, and you go out into the world, what can stop you?
Right.
You're doing what satiates you. You're doing what nourishes you across multiple planes. If you're true to yourself, if you're true to your passion, your ambition, you don't care. Nothing stops you. And guess what? It reverberates. It shows itself. People will gravitate towards it. Not
Mhm.
because it's, anything woo woo or anything bypassed, because it just makes sense, right?
Right.
People gravitate towards genuine people.
Do you ever feel like no matter what you do, it's not good enough? Like perfect is the only standard, but you're still left feeling behind? Perfectionism keeps us stuck. It robs us of peace, of our joy, and the freedom to just be. That's why I created Beauty of Imperfection, Good is Enough, a guided workbook to help you let go of the pressure, quiet your inner critic, and start celebrating progress over perfection. Inside, you'll find tools that remind you your worth has never depended on being perfect. It's time to embrace the beauty of imperfection because good really is enough. Let me remind you, you are always worthy. You already are. Get your copy of my workbook today. Emotionally unavailable. Okay. Listen, usually I'm really good at summarizing the way I feel about reading your profile and starting at a place, but your profile made me think of way too many things because, man, our missions are really aligned. But sounds like you've known a lot of the stuff I've only learned around the last couple of years for a long time. So I really don't even know where to start because there's so many good things about what you're doing. Um, can I just ask you, like, how long like, when would you pinpoint when you had a spiritual awakening? I'm just really curious.
I don't know if, I get kind of asked this question a lot. I don't know if I can kind of identify an acute moment. I've really been on this journey for maybe 25 years, to be honest with you. I've always kind of had, um, kind of like a deep sense that things weren't right, weren't aligned properly.
Mhm.
I was a philosophy and economic theory major in college. So I've really kind of always, again, kind of, I guess, been on this journey,
Okay, so you
for
weren't raised with
quite some
weird
time.
culty religious shit?
No, I was not. I
Man, how
didn't have the
lucky are
pleasure.
you?
I didn't have the pleasure. I mean, I was raised in a, I guess, formal religious kind of construct, but, a lot of kind of, as you can see, kind of the topics that I look into, doesn't really, I'd say, revolve around, uh, kind of looking at spirituality in kind of like a very myopic framework, right? Like I look at it as, well, I look at kind of our existence and kind of the way the world is structured on kind of a multi-dimensional planes, if you will, right? And I think that what has happened, and this is again a central theme with what I'm trying to do, is what has happened is that people have been, in many ways, consciously or unconsciously, um, been disconnected from this sort of spiritual thread, right?
Mhm.
And to be honest with you, and this is kind of an important, I think, piece. I was never really kind of like a spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual person, right? I wasn't like into any of the the kind of like the spiritual movement, which I have, by the way, problems with for a number of kind of fundamental reasons. But what I found was that it's really part and parcel. In fact, foundational
Mhm.
to a lot of what we see in the modern age. So
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Well, I will say that for myself, I was raised in Oklahoma. That's where I still live. And people think I'm exaggerating, but like honestly, if you live here and you are raised with religion, it's all fundamentalist. There's no sort of this cherry picking this, any of that. You're not allowed to choose for yourself at all here. And it really is centered around shaming you as a human being. That's just my experience. I think a lot of people here would say the same thing who have deconstructed the way that I have. Um, I would like to touch on what you said about, the spiritual movement. Is it the whole bypassing thing that you have a problem with in terms of if you were to just pinpoint a central issue with the spiritual movement? Because 'Cause I've noticed some people I felt very turned off by because, well, some of them don't seem grounded in reality, if I'm being very honest.
Yeah, it's exactly. I mean, that's certainly central to it, but I think there's also a I can kind of frame it in an interesting way as well. But yes, I mean, the spiritual bypassing movement is not. I don't really understand um, how people are connecting the dots to living kind of like an embodied whole experience.
Mhm,
And in fact, when you kind of go into the actual, um, when you can kind of like put together the infrastructure of really what spirituality is, or really how to kind of awaken and incorporate spirituality into your life. It's about embodiment.
mhm,
It's about reconnecting with that spirit, with that soul, with that higher realm. And on a higher level, if you look at kind of like the world we live in, right, in this kind of overextended, hyper masculine
mhm,
world, right? Um, what 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 a lot of the spirituality movement tries to do is, they come out and they represent again this a reconnection to this other realm, if you will,
mhm.
or this other part of you, if you will, but they're doing it in equally as an acute form. So while we're so pushed to the masculine, they push you all to the feminine. When every ancient teaching, every the true nature of any really religion, Eastern philosophy, or even just kind of I think grounded, um, deep understanding, uh, doesn't say that, right? It's really about balance, and it's
Mhm.
about balance in uh, really all aspects of your life. Now, this isn't like I'm not being dogmatic here, but it's not about a complete skew to either side, and
Right.
that's what a lot of that movement does.
No, I agree. And for myself, I think I had to wildly shift to the feminine once I realized I had lived in my masculine only for my entire life for survival. I had to come home to myself and really understand what that felt like. And then kind of, the pendulum swings back to the middle or whatever. I'm being really serious when I say this. But it's kind of funny. I kind of wonder if maybe there's just been too much psychedelic use, because I know a lot of people who use shrooms and whatever else, um, and they've learned some of the stuff that I've learned, but it feels like that is a form of bypassing. Like not always. I'm not saying you can't use psychedelics in conjunction with other things or whatever, but honestly, I think it is lending itself to a little bit of that head in
Yeah,
the
for
clouds.
sure. I mean, you don't want to, you don't want to get caught in like the astral plane. That's not how you're meant to live your life, right? Like, so, but psychedelics and sacred medicine is what I like to call it. I think that it can be a good tool.
Mhm.
I think that there's application in the treatment of mental illness. I think that there's
Oh,
also an
absolutely.
application just with a general kind of retouching of spirituality. I mean, when you use psychedelics, you are sort of re-engaging with again a reality that we're disconnected from, whether whether by virtue of our simple sort of anatomy, sensory faculties, etc. So it's again, I think it can be a great tool, but absolutely, I mean, when you're living in that kind of other plane of existence,
Yeah, because there are
it's
creators
not.
out there who are, like, microdosing every day, most of the day, and I'm like, "Yeah, I don't think that was really how that was intended to be used." I mean, for myself, I won't just because, schizophrenia is really prominent in my genes. I have a schizophrenic brother, and, my mom was diagnosed as schizophrenic, but honest to God, I think that she struggled with the same thing I struggled with, which is a lot of internal noise that got to a place where I felt like it was otherworldly. Like my self-talk was very loud and it was different. And so I really don't think she was schizophrenic because I was around her a lot, and she didn't act the way I know schizophrenic people to act. But she certainly, had delusions and things like that coming off of crack, but she wasn't schizophrenic. But even still, with a brother being very schizophrenic, I'm like, I stay away from hallucinogenics. But, I mean, I have taken, like, medical marijuana edibles for a few years now, and, I mean, I can get to the same place, I feel like, like, 'cause I learned a lot of lessons just in those, like, really, really, really dark places. And that's how I would define my awakening, is just this slow but then very rushed different paradigm shifts, like, all day every day, to where, like, I really thought I was in spiritual psychosis for a hot second, because it was very new and I was a completely different person every day for months, because I was curious and I was ready to not hurt the way I was hurting. And so I was really just like wide open. But when I was reading, kind of because I'm tired today and I really didn't know where to start with you, I was reading like your, good questions to ask you or whatever. I really felt like it might really be important today to talk about, with our cult, the climate being what it is right now, how we are stuck in these systems that we're really unaware of, because I wasn't taught to think critically. Thank God I have a 22-year-old who was. And so he's really like, he called me to the carpet every single time that I was, well, me fucking up a little bit, with my beliefs or whatever. And did I have a single ounce of anything to support my beliefs? No, never. For one thing, I didn't pay attention in school because I was going through extensive trauma my entire childhood. So I was just surviving. I graduated high school with a 1.7. It was really impressive. And it wasn't till college later that I was like, oh my God, I'm smart. And I didn't take a lot of history in college. I did take a lot of social work, but it didn't teach me anything about the old systems that were created that we're still very much a part of. And I feel like that's with, I'll say this with my full chest, with the fact that we are really repeating a lot of history. I feel like it's a good place to talk about the fact that we are a part of systems that we're really unaware of.
Yeah, for sure. I think that what's unique and what kind of, what kind of I find is that with, I guess it's not interesting, but a lot of people kind of have these awakenings when they have these kind of like acute traumatic moments, right? And a lot of people, I think, throughout their life are, a lot of these people are more in tune, I think, with the spiritual side of them, or are more kind of plugged into their soul, if you will, than I think the general population. I think that that's why, and I think that because they're kind of like so pushed, they're kind of like this is like this friction against this side of you, and that it kind of has to come out, right? It's like you've had enough.
Mhm.
Um, and when you look at to kind of like your point, when you look at modern day systems, and you say, we're back to where we were historically, I don't think that we um I think that I think we have kind of been on this trajectory for a while. I think that in many ways things just haven't changed in quite some time. And if you really kind of, peel back the layers, if you will, a lot of this hierarchy, if you will, that exists in, or the hierarchical construct that exists in the modern age, interestingly enough, comes from our religious institutions. The idea, and it's rooted in this idea that God is separate from us, we are
Mhm.
beneath God, the earth is beneath us, right? And it mirrors exactly kind of certainly the corporate structure on many levels, but it's really kind of like the architecture behind these systems that we've created. And then when you look at um, how sort of like the human evolution of consciousness has taken form, people think that it's kind of like just kind of like happens, like we just kind of whatever. But in truth, it's really linked to ideology. It's really linked to religious beliefs. It's really linked to belief systems. And if you look at um, the different uh sort of ages that we've gone through, whether it's the age of enlightenment or these different kind of ages of consciousness, where through academics and through science, et cetera, different components of the human experience or our existence has been revealed. Right? They're very the way that those have taken form in our culture are very different from the way they've taken form in other cultures, right? Because they didn't have similar sort of revelations across these fields of study, if you will, right? But the predominant sort of the tools, if you will, that we get from these ages, right, through these exposés, and from science and from philosophy, economic theory, all these things, is really in many ways is uh, really pegged to this scientific and mechanistic material paradigm, which kind of came to fruition during the Age of Enlightenment, where these thinkers said, you know, guys like Rene Descartes said that the mind was separate from the body, where you had like Newtonian science that pegged everything to this sort of like reductionist, everything is material. There's no soul. Consciousness comes from like some spark through matter, et cetera, et cetera. Uh, Quick segue, what we're discovering now in science is that this, in fact, is not true. It's the materialist lens is flawed. Physics right now is showing us that the fundamental structure of reality is not fixed form, is not matter. It's consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And ancient civilizations have, were aware of this. They express it in different ways, but and what does that mean? It means that you know the the human being is not just some mass, right? That consciousness precedes the physical form, right? And obviously, people can't maybe don't understand how powerful that is and how that um, ideology or cosmology has shaped our world,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just the way it is, right? It's the background behind, um, predominant economic ideologies like liberalism, guys like John Locke, capitalism, guys like Adam Smith. I mean, this is the bedrock of modern society. These were the theories, these were the ideas that formed our current infrastructure, right? Whether it's in education, economics, medicine, right?
Mm-hmm.
These really were kind of like the foundational bedrock. Um, so you kind of had again this like hierarchical structure that existed that took form with really the Catholic Church. Now, certainly there were hierarchies that existed before that, but the unique structure that they provided was in many ways, and there's no really need to get into the intricacy of it, but that was really kind of like the hierarchy that lent itself. And then you had like the tools, if you will, through this Enlightenment age, and then you have the current sort of political and economic framework that creates this engine, right? So you have this idea that there's this, you're ordering life by hierarchy, everything is material, right? And then you have these political um, systems that took that construct and they institutionalize it through economy, right? So we created we created industrial capitalism that was this kind of like mechanized structure where people were treated as units,
Mm-hmm.
right? Labor was extracted, the earth was extracted, the resources were extracted. We severed our connection to everything. We lost this sacred understanding of ourselves and our place in the universe. And by the way, this is the reality of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you drill down on it, people talk about all is one. There's just one, right? But in truth, that's the case, right? We are connected to other people. We are connected to the ecosystems of the planet. We are connected to nature. We are connected to biology shows this with respect to we have mirror neurons in our brain that connect when other people are experiencing things. We have in the natural world, we breathe in oxygen and expel carbon dioxide. Well, trees do the opposite, right? We're connected to them there. There are ecosystems where trees communicate through fungus or through fungi underneath, So again, we're kind of it's this illusion of separateness
Mm-hmm.
that has plagued us through this human evolution of consciousness, right? So when people, and people kind of go through this awakening, right? In many ways, they default to like finger pointing and victimization, and that there's a few people on the top who are puppeteers, are controlling everything. And to be clear, there are power structures that exist, right?
Mhm.
When you institutionalize everything, when you institutionalize the human being, right? When the institution that was meant to serve becomes extractive, and the institution is placed above the individual, well, what do? Well, you mechanize everything, right? And then people in power positions can, extract, and people that are, hugely successful, whether through, escalating on the political spectrum or who through business, who know how to manipulate the system to push agenda or to get certain benefits, et cetera. These are people who understand the system and who know how to, ascend within that system, right?
Mhm.
They're not necessarily like pulling strings like behind some demonic ritual, right? Like
Right.
this is like
Right.
this is like important for people to understand, because this is really about how we have how we have as a society, right, evolved consciously. We are part of this ecosystem.
Mhm.
We're not, we feel like victims, but in truth, that's not the reality. We are part of it. We feed into it every day. We go every day that we, conform or we bend ourselves, we are contributing to this mechanized existence. Now,
Mhm.
I will kind of say that it's important also to kind of take this to a deeper layer where, again, when you peel things back, and I believe that really at the root, it's about this illusion of separation. When you peel this back, it's about a reorientation to the world as we know it.
Mhm.
It's about understanding how these systems have severed us from the sacred. And by the way, and this is kind of like funny when you look at like the religious fundamentalists who, um, you know, they read scripture, they point to the Bible, everything's interpreted literally, but the entire text was canonized, through the through the Roman Empire. I mean, when the Roman Empire, which is probably like one of the most toxic
Right.
empires to have ever plagued our planet, adopts a religion.
Right.
What are people so naive as to think that that the original teachings were not changed? I mean, it's widely known that they extracted, that they changed, and then through the King James Bible, things were reinterpreted completely incorrectly
Right.
from the original Greek or Latin text. So, and again, this isn't about renouncing the existence of Jesus. There are
It's about
interpretations
thinking
out there.
critically.
Right. It's about being curious, and not just accepting what
Yeah.
you're born into,
And
right?
I
Not just
super
accepting.
was. I accepted every ounce of it, and, like,
Most people
embarrassingly,
do,
Aaron, like, I'm so embarrassed still about it because
but
I
most
took it
people
all
do.
personally.
But most people do, and it's not just about, again, this acceptance um is pervasive. It's not, you see it kind of in its most acute form with religion,
Right.
where people. But again, the religion also fragments, right? Like
Mhm.
when you drill down, you look at the original teachings of all Abrahamic faiths, Eastern philosophies. Really, the undercurrent is the same when it comes to our understanding of the sacred, of source, however you want to understand that construct. So when people like cling to, like the, Muslims are bad, Jews are bad,
Right.
like, well, all of these people who are devout fundamental followers have all been misled.
Mhm.
Now maybe they want their religion in that form, but that's not what the true nature of the whole story tells them. And it's when you drill down, and it's when you get a clear understanding of what these religions were actually teaching at the beginning, before they were institutionalized, right?
Mhm.
Before the priests were made the intermediaries to God, right? We
Right.
externalized our connection to our sacred nature, our, to source, and people robotically go through rituals without ever experiencing anything that resembles. They quote scripture eloquently, and they feel this through the word. Like, this is not what the whole message is about.
Right.
Um, in most cases, the texts are metaphorical, and they point to a deeper meaning.
Mhm.
But people, again, when you're born into, again, this again shows itself acutely with religion, but this transcends all institutions. This happens with, with institutionalized economy, government, education. Just think about it for a second. Back up, right? Like you're born into this world and you're navigating and you're trying to understand what's going on and you're looking at your friends and your family. And by the way, those people are also kind of lost too, right? They've never
Yeah.
been grounded. And you're kind of trying to figure things out. And so, oh well, everybody says that college is the right thing to do. Everyone says that education is the right to do. And not even that they say it, they know that if they don't conform to it,
Mhm.
then they're not going to be able to exist in society in a meaningful way, right? So it's not that they're naive or that they're ignorant or that they're bad. It's just that to blindly accept without question is really a is really one of the biggest plagues of our society, because when you drill down not just on the religious institutions but on the education system, the healthcare system, when we've institutionalized and we've mechanized society and we've made people into these units of extraction, of labor, of a resource,
Mhm.
people don't realize what that's done to these systems. We the human being is treated as separate, right?
Right.
So so and it bleeds into everything. It bleeds into even our education system. Like I'm sure you're aware of this, because you experienced it, right? Our education system doesn't educate.
Right.
It conforms it conforms the child. It makes people more obedient. And if you go back, you can look at the origin story. It was created in this country by, industrial capitalists to create docile workers. This is
Mhm.
well known. Do people care? Do people know it? Probably not. But you know, if people did know that and they realized that they were indoctrinated in a way that wasn't giving them what they thought that they were getting, right? That never, and it's kind of obvious. Like you go through school, whether it's K through 12 or even college, and like you come out, like you don't know how to live in the real world. Like
Right.
what have you actually learned?
Right.
Right? Like everything that I learned to succeed in my life, I learned on the job. Like
Mhm.
maybe like the methodology of thinking you kind of get into at higher levels or maybe in high school, but really in high school it's about kind of memorization and regurgitation, even so
Absolutely.
on like the undergraduate level. So again, it's when you grow up in these systems, you blindly accept and then you live your life according to this plan that you've inherited, and it bleeds into your belief systems and your values. So that was a lot, but this is really kind of like the important part of awakening and realization, to understand the origin story, to understand how these systems bleed into multiple, planes, multiple levels of our experience. And this isn't conspiracy theory. This is the way that
Right.
the world works.
Right.
So it's about tuning into actual reality is what it is. And again, people um, need and thrive in many ways through illusion, and it's these illusions that people cling to. And this is why awakening for people is difficult, because they have to shed these illusions, and these
Mhm.
illusions have created their identity, have created their safety in the world. This is
Well,
why
that you just hit the
most
nail
people,
on the head. Safety.
right, and this is why um it's, even if you were to give somebody information, they have to get there on their own time, or maybe they don't
Mhm.
ever get there, but you're telling them that, you know, the things the fundamental nature of their existence is to be questioned. The fundamental identity that they have, the way that they see the world, is not as it is. This is threatening.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's a coincidence that the Bible in its current form pretty solidly teaches against questioning. I also think the Bible in its current form was written to oppress women and other marginalized communities. But I also, my thought lately has really been because I've been trying to, that was probably the best part of awakening for me was going through that process of understanding mirroring, understanding reflection, projection, all of that stuff. And so as I was really exploring that, I kind of started to make sure very intentionally that if I had a troubling, upsetting, judgmental thought about somebody else, that I would figure out how that was directly related to a judgment I had in myself. Like, I was very committed to it because I knew it to be true, and I didn't want to live my life in that way anymore, where I just saw the world through wounding and really did kind of see people as bad. I mean, I don't think I would have said that, but that is how I felt. And so as I've really explored this, I really came home to the fact that, like, holy shit, we really are all connected. Like, I feel so connected to humanity. Going further, I really believe that so much of why we have the systems in place that we do and why they came from where they came from is, for lack of a better phrase, just that scarcity mindset. People are so afraid that there's not enough, and they're just trying to, keep themselves alive. I don't even think back then they really cared about keeping their families alive. It was just very hierarchical and dog eat dog, and let me just get to where I need to get to and make sure I'm good. And I think that's what we're seeing translated on a big stage now. If you were really to just scrape away all the layers, I think people are so afraid of just laying down the sword and being like, "There's enough for all of us." Like, I don't know what the fuck we're
Yeah.
fighting about.
No, you're right. And look, part of the systems that we have, they, you kind of hit the nail on the head there. They manufacture scarcity,
Mhm.
right? When it comes down to it. And people will say, oh, well, it creates an engine that pushes progress. Like, there are other ways to do that. And by the
Right.
way, how we define progress is completely flawed.
Thank you.
A civilization that has a superior technology, but is soulless and mindless about their truth, about the truths of this, of this experience, of this universe, of their life, is not an evolved, um, is not an evolved society.
Mhm.
It is hollow, and it's remarkable that, and by the way, this again, going back to human nature, like you kind of pinpointed, you have people that have ascended in this society, right, through these institutions, and then, kind of like, what do you think they're going to do, right? They've been, they also have been indoctrinated in
Mhm.
this like they've been led astray as well. Their experience has materialized differently, but they're just as blind as everybody else in many cases. Now,
Mhm.
there are certainly groups of people that hold esoteric knowledge, that understand the nature of the universe, and that use this in many ways in sinister capacities. I'm sure of it. Just how, I mean, it would be bizarre if that wasn't the case,
Right. I mean,
right?
well,
So,
that's human nature is for somebody to
right,
go
right,
astray.
right, and so, and like, even these people who have accumulated, massive amounts of wealth, and what are they going to do? They're still in this survivalist mentality. They're still in this mindset of scarcity. They still have to, quote unquote, protect themselves. So they utilize these systems. They do whatever they can to amass more power or more wealth. I mean, it's not like it's counterintuitive. It's kind of what everyone else would do, right? Like,
Right.
so, but the point is here is, and kind of what we touched on, is that the fundamental problem is not with the kind of like surface layer systems. It's with the human civilization's understanding of themselves and the relationship to everything else.
Right.
And if people were not operating with such illusions, these systems would change. These systems would um, would restructure themselves, because at the end of the day, the power structures at play, especially in the United States, are still beholden to the people.
Mhm.
It's the way it works now. It's been so corrupted. I mean, it's really nauseating,
Mhm.
how government has become kind of this like self-serving entity that, um, is corrupted through business and special interests, and a push towards Western hegemony. But if people, if we collectively are able to shift consciousness and to, um, realign with our reality, and we can create systems that foster that connection, that foster this awakened understanding of the world. And nothing happens overnight, right? It
Right.
takes time. So just as we have quote unquote evolved to this level of consciousness as a civilization, over long periods of time, through fear, through scarcity, through misunderstood ideology and cosmologies that we inherited from education and medicine and all these things that we assign divinity to, right?
Yep.
Um, over a long period of time, so too will this evolution take form. Like people are here in such a short period of time,
Right.
right? Like people can't expect these changes to take place. And what we're seeing now, um, is our people are again, a lot of the stuff isn't necessarily new, right? There were a lot of movements in the past that kind of spoke the same message. But what's happening now is um, a real revelation
Mm-hmm.
of the corruption of these systems. Not only that, it we have been pushed to such an extreme that it's bleeding into the everyday lives of people, where people feel it now more. And what that does is that cracks open a part of them. Some people will be able to kind of like sustain it, struggle through it, get to wherever they're and kind of like die or pass on to the next experience. Uh, but we are in many ways seeding the future growth of our civilization, of our consciousness through
Mm-hmm.
these conversations, through the books that people write, through the podcasts that people have. And uh, backing up to bring this, I think, into greater perspective, if you look at the inherent nature of the universe, just by the way that it operates, from the mechanics of the universe call, like the divine program, all of creation, all of existence takes place through polarity. It takes place through light and dark, feminine and masculine, right? Inhale and exhale. Um, there's many other ways to kind of you see this in nature, you see this in the universe, you see this in the human being. Again, this sacred code, if you will, exists across all planes. But inherent to that polarity is you need a balance. The universe seeks balance.
Mm-hmm.
It seeks balance in the human being as well. So, and the universe is the most powerful force, right? Source is the most powerful force out there. So when in the human being we become so imbalanced, whether we feel it, whether we experience it, whether however we want to express this, whether it shows itself in our institutions, in our economies, in the individual whatever it is. But when it's pushed too far, well, the universe rebalances, and there's no synthetic program you can put on that you can overlay into our civilization. There's unless people become so, hypnotized where they willingly over generations sever themselves from their true sacred nature, their true connection to source, their true, the true underlying currents of universal order, of universal laws, unless we get to that extreme, which I don't believe we will.
Right.
um, but, you know, the idea of karma is that it's this kind of like snap back. It's this rebalancing, right? So we will snap back. It's just how will that take form? What are the levers that will be pulled, and how will that show itself, right? So again, to kind of like bring this into again a perspective and an understanding rooted in real reality and real universal laws, not woo woo
Right.
spiritual bypassing, right?
Right.
And this is a big part of my effort. It's connecting the dots that these forces, these powers transcend everything because we're all connected. So to our systems, to ourselves. Um, so again, that's the gamble, right? It's are you going to align yourself? Yeah, the gamble again to like people who are in power that know this, or people who um, are seeing this maybe and are electing to kind of like stay in the quote unquote dark or to kind of like feed into the system. That's the gamble in many ways. Like, do you want to keep pushing against the current to accumulate money and to distort yourself? Or do you want to align yourself with something more powerful that will bring you into coherence with yourself and with literal reality? And for me, you know, I took that gamble because I knew at my core through my experience that the other way wasn't sustainable. It wasn't sustainable for me. And kind of through my journey, it's 100% the the right play. Yes, your relationships will suffer. Yes, you might not be myopically focused on money and survival. Yes, it might have consequences for you in external parts of your existence, right? This is obvious. But if you know how to align yourself, if you know how to embody these spiritual teachings and practices, and again, if you can, uh, through affirmations or whatever methodology you want to use, if you can learn how to take back control of your consciousness and of the way you manage thoughts and emotions, all these things are tied to these same universal powers. You will live a more fulfilled life. You will live a
Mhm.
more balanced life. You will align yourself with your truth, not with your distortion. So that was a lot, but it's important, in my opinion, to give people a perspective that this movement or that this push to awakening is not rooted in some otherworldly realm that is detached and that we have to, you know, live off the grid.
Right.
In
That's
truth,
a
it's about
very important
recognizing
distinction.
it's important. It's about, and by the way, the structures at play now, the structures in place now make it very difficult, right?
Sure.
But the beginning work is this. It's about aligning yourself and then embodying it and living it. And when you live in that current and you live in that energy field and you are that transmission, whether you recognize it or not, it impacts the world
Absolutely. That's
because eh,
exactly what I'm trying to teach people too, is it starts with you. And when you change, the world around you changes. I noticed a difference in every single person in my life. Not all of the differences were great in terms of peripheral relationships because they didn't necessarily like the changes because I was not the version of myself that they felt they needed me to be, but the vibrations in my fucking house completely elevated. My relationships are so much better and I'm better. And then those ripple effects. Now I've got an 11-year-old who's going out into the world from a better place. She doesn't have a fucking psycho mom who's over here losing her shit at every minute of every day, living in survival mode. She has a mom who's teaching her to be emboldened and be herself and to live in truth and not follow what people, like she got this boomer ass gym teacher who does nothing but bitch about the dress code violations. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, but it gives me really good opportunities to talk about how those mindsets were created, and I take those opportunities. And she feels so secure in a way that I never experienced at her age or fucking 43. Like I'm new to the security that I feel. And I have no doubt that I would say, broken some real ancestral curses and cycles, and that she will be like the new wave of our new line because she's different. And I mean, my boys are 18 and 22. They are different too because I am different. But each of us will go out and we'll do our little respective things in the world that maybe don't look like they add up to that much. But every little thing that you do in truth does add up. And I think like I'm really passionate about people understanding that too, because especially if you're a person who's afraid in today's society, it can feel like, "What's the point? What can
well, it's
I
yeah.
offer?"
Well, also, but let's not make like let's kind of like take it a level deeper, not another level deeper, but let's look at it a little bit differently also, which I think is important. Yes, you will be that transmission if we're talking about changing the world or even like your individual experience with people in your relationships, right? But more importantly, and this is the big, in my opinion, this is kind of like the biggest life hack, right? Um, More importantly, what this reorientation does is it you can allow it to manifest within yourself. So let's look at the systems. You are taught to go through schooling, digest information, regurgitate it. You are taught to obey orders. You are taught to, children sit in classroom for God knows how many hours, just kind of like, uh, like just pushing against their non-linear thinking, focus to be linear thinkers,
Right.
all of these horrible things that are happening. And then you go through and then you go out and you get a job, blah, 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 to make money, to sustain yourself, to live, right? Um, in truth and reality, right? This does not create the optimal path for you, not only for your well-being, for your soul, but to your ability to achieve financial success.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because you are contorting yourself to accommodate a system through which you make money. The real life hack is to understand yourself, your place in the universe, and align with it. Because when you are true to yourself, when you are true to your reality, and you go out into the world, what can stop you? You're
Right.
doing you're doing what satiates you. You're doing what nourishes you across multiple planes. If you're true to yourself, if you're true to your passion, your ambition, you don't care. Nothing stops you. And guess what? It reverberates. It shows itself. People will gravitate towards it. Not
Mm-hmm.
because it's, you know, anything woo woo or anything bypassed, because it just makes sense, right?
Right.
People gravitate towards genuine people. Now, whether if your thing is you like, you know, I mean, you could think of the craziest things. I mean, whatever it is, but if you are passionate about it, and if you are driven with it, and if you focus your effort on that, if your desire is to, again, even not even just like survive, to thrive, you will be more successful in
Mm-hmm.
that pursuit, even in this current system. You might have to get obviously you'll have to be crafty in other ways. You'll have to find different ways to
Right. You have
support
to
that.
figure out
But
how to work the
right, to figure
system.
out
Yeah.
but yeah, but if you're true to yourself, you're never failing. You're just because you're enjoying it. You're enjoying it.
Exactly.
Um, so again, it's this reorientation is not just for like the general collective. It's for yourself also,
Well, and I'd
which
say
is
it has to
missed.
start with self.
Right. But it also aligns with even the values of our current modern world, of this current paradigm, of this timeline, right? It can also allow you to manifest what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
This is also kind of missed in a lot of these like manifestation kind of people where, they understand again on the periphery what's happening, but for me, I like to know that I have, like the universal order at my back, right? That's kind of a good feeling, right? Because people seek safety through our institutions and through
Mm-hmm.
our systems. I seek safety through knowing that I'm aligned with the undercurrent of the universe and myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because one more thing, because we are we are just as powerful in our own reality as source. We
Yeah.
are we are the universe experiencing itself in this unique form, right? We are part of this fabric. And we have just, we are shaping the universe every day with our words, with our actions, with our experiences. We don't see it because we're like very limited, right? And we're not focusing on it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's happening. So again, I'd rather align myself with that reality, which is the real reality, not some delusional, synthetic construct that people think is reality. And that it makes it hard for me in many ways to kind of like, be part of the residue of that or the byproduct of that, whether it's through conversation or whatever it is. But I'm choosing to live my life in reality across, you know, all planes of my existence.
I
It's
love
just what
that.
it is.
I love that. Man, I'm really enjoyed this conversation with you. Before we wrap up, where can we find you? What are you doing? Wait, what,
Yeah,
what
so
do-
I have a podcast that I just finished my first season called the Evolved podcast with Aaron Scott. It's I am probably gonna kick it back up in September. And that podcast discusses a lot of the kind of like inherited beliefs
I love
and a
that.
lot of the byproduct of these systems that people don't really understand.
Yeah.
And I go into kind of like the origin stories of the true nature. I give people a new perspective on how to understand understand the world around them and their orientation to that world. I have a book coming out that I'm hoping will I'm in the final kind of editing stages now, so it's exciting, but I'm also like trying to make sure that it's perfect, which is
I
not gonna happen, but
know.
but but I'm hoping that gets out, sometime in September as well, called, The Fifth Evolution: A
Oh,
Blueprint, a Sacred Blueprint for Personal and Global Awakening, where I provide not just kind of a lot of what we talked about, but I talk about, again, these systems, how we've, created this, toxic relationship with them in the world around us, why awakening is difficult, and I provide tools that I think will empower people and make, again, living in the real world awakened, more easy, because you're pushing against a lot of these energetic currents, right?
right.
And then kind of like what the true return, is to this reorientation. So I'm hoping that it will be a impactful book. My effort is, again, I think you get that sense, is to empower people through truth, knowledge, real orientation, give them a better perspective, a more whole perspective of themselves, and allow them to live fuller, better, happier lives.
Absolutely. And just want to, I love that your focus is to in the here and now, in the fact that you can do all of these things and be all of these things exactly how the world is right now. Like, you don't have to go create massive change in the world for you to have the life that you're in love with, essentially. You can build the life that you're in love with and be aligned with your truth, with your authenticity right here, right now. I love that. Man, powerful message. Well, and when your book releases, feel free to let me know, and I'm happy to help you
Absolutely.
promote that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I've written a book. I understand. Okay. I'm going to stop recording, but please don't hang up right away.
Okay.
Thanks for coming to Emotionally Unavailable. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, and share.